Hey, welcome to the Thought Brothers. I'm Gary Johnson. We got the regular crew here, no visitors, no guest hosts. So tonight we're going to try something a little different. We're going to start off, instead of focusing on one issue, we're going to take a look at some of the biggest stories, conversations, and moments shaping our communities and the country this week. It's going to be whatever they take. So some of it may challenge you, some of it may make you laugh or react. But here's how we're going to start off. Just like I used to do when I was in the training business, we're going to kick it off with an icebreaker. Mr. Spivey, here we go. Describe your week in one word. I'll even give you a hyphenated word if you have to, but one word. How's your week? One word.
Confusing.
Okay. All right. Carlos.
Busy.
CJ.
Effed up.
Okay. All right. That's how we do it. We just honest takes here of our brothers. So, well, CJ, we'll start with you since we had that one. What's the biggest story of the week in your view, and why is the story important?
Like a news story is what
Any story, any story. It could be any story that you think. What's the biggest story for you this week, and why is it important?
biggest story of, I think we might have a weekend at Bernie situation happening in our Senate right now, with the one Mitch McConnell. I don't know if people are familiar with Mitch McConnell, but he may be dead. Like, we don't know. Nobody can get proof of life from him or his office, not even a 30-second FaceTime of him just waving his hand saying, "Hey, I'm alive." So we haven't been able to get that since he's been hospitalized for, several weeks. He was rushed to the hospital, hasn't been heard since. And if he did die, there would be a special election for his seat. So every Republican yesterday amazingly had a 20-minute phone call with Mitch McConnell where he was amazingly sharp and talking about the war. There's no proof of this, but apparently, if we take their word for it, Mitch McConnell's doing just fine, even though they can't, produce proof of life for the senator, which is going to be a generational hate watch celebration for people when he actually goes, as Mitch McConnell's one of the most hated figures in American politics for good reason. Like, I would literally unplug him to charge my phone so yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
All right. All right. Not to put too fine a point on it, Carlos.
What?
Biggest story for you.
Biggest story? Hey, look, I thought the biggest story was the 250th celebration of the country. But then it turned out that it still may be the name on the Kennedy Center. The tarp is still there at the Kennedy Center. And then I thought that would supersede the 250. But then the reflecting pool, what we arrested, the country has arrested an Olympian who supposedly went to touch the peeling paint because he didn't believe it was peeling or something to that effect. And now he's been arrested and charged, and it's a big mess. And that actually is, in a weird way, is like the biggest story. The reflecting pool was supposed to be ready for this great celebration. It got botched. I'm no scientist, but American flag blue and algae yellow might make green, and I think that's what's happened. Um, and then, if you want to transition or pivot a little bit from all the Trump stuff that's happening in DC, the world and the U.S. had soccer to get away from Trump, and Trump found a way into soccer. How? Just how? He somehow got a player who had a red flag who wasn't supposed to play for the U.S. team play. And then he mentioned, after he got him eligible, he mentioned something about, if we lose, it's going to be rigged. U.S. lost. So in other words, the biggest story in my neighborhood or in the country has still been our fearless leader.
Okay. Mr. Spivey, what's the big story for you?
Listening to Carlos and listening to CJ. Whenever you think you heard it all or seen it all, something else stupid will come out of this administration. And the biggest story for me was, and I'm going to read it: the White House brands the Smithsonian leadership as radical activists who cannot be trusted. Donald Trump has now branded the Smithsonian Museum, but particularly the National Museum of American History, as radical activists. And what he's doing is he's going to put together his own staff to redo the American Museum because he feels that it is not giving the proper, I guess, the proper description of how things were. You know, he wants to erase and eradicate slavery. The bad part about this is the African American Museum has been up for what, about 4 years now. They have had millions of people who have come from all over the world to visit there. And so you're not, I don't care what you do, you can go in there and do whatever you want, but you're not going to be able to erase what has already been said. Another thing was this 4th of July celebration, I guess you would call it poetic justice. They had the 4th of July celebration and a storm came up and they had to take shelter. And all of the radical, I guess, politically correct left wing people had to take shelter in the African American Museum. So I'm sure that was an experience for them.
Yeah, our president can't even spell history, and he's got the nerve to just, I guess that's his narcissism. CJ, what's going on in the world of sports?
Sports, looks not too much. If you're looking at Commanders news from, here at home, Brandon Ayuk is trying to force his way to being a Commander, but he's Antonio Browning his way out of the league with just crazy rants. And he was supposedly friends with Jaden Daniel, but there was a fan that heckled Jaden Daniels and was talking about, like F Brandon Ayuk, and Jaden kind of just laughed it off. And then Ayuk took exception to that apparently. And then he's been smack talking Jaden Daniels for some reason, who's now unfollowed him and ignoring him, but he's still saying like, I'm going to be on the Commanders and hey, call me back and all that. He's just acting really unhinged, and it really calls into question again the CTE that these players get. There was another 24-year-old player that died, and they discovered that his brain had CTE at only 24. So, and they're discovering almost like clockwork when these players die, that their brains, when they study them, they have this radical CTE even in their early 20s. So I think that's still an issue that the league is not going to be able to avoid. I know there was a whole movie they tried to bury about it, that Will Smith movie and things like that.
Yeah.
And they have the Guardian caps, and they're making some slight progress and allowing players the option to wear the cap, but still there's still going to be a safety issue. As much as we all love football, I don't think anyone wants the game to go away, but we have to address making it safer if we want young people playing this game.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Gary, let me jump in on that, man. Since I've been working with, the high school football players and got, fellow football alumni in the college ranks, and we even got a few football alumni that played in the NFL. When you think about the NFL and you think about a lot of these injuries, some players just play totally too long. I mean, the average lifespan of NFL players is 4 to 5 years, right? But, the majority of players that seem to have most of these injuries are players who play for more than 5 years. So if you think about that, right, I haven't heard of too many players saying they played for 2 years and got cut and they had CTE. I mean, I'm not sure what the studies are, the percentages are. I think the NFL may seriously have to look at putting a limit on the number of years you play. I don't know if it's healthy to play more than 10 years, maybe more than 8 years. I'm not sure. You got to put a cap somewhere. But if you're at 10, 15, 20 years of punishment for some of those all-stars who can play that long, is it even weird to think they might get CTE? Junior Seau was an outstanding linebacker for the San Diego Chargers, and then he did the retirement tour, I think, with the Patriots and Dolphins. And I think he played about maybe 15, 16, maybe even 17 years in the league. I think he came out like 90 or 91 out of USC. And I think he played to like 2006, 2007. Well, he's no longer with us, okay? And me and him would have been, I believe, the same. He was born the same year I was born. And he just literally drove his truck off a cliff. I think it was a Cadillac Escalade, and killed himself. And they later found out he had CTE. So again, I mean, I'm sure the NFL doesn't want to say, hey, we're going to limit the number of years our players can play, but I think that has something to do with it. I know that players are much stronger when they're younger. I mean, you can say a 35-year-old's in the best shape of his life, but 9 times out of 10, he's not beating a 25-year-old in a 40-yard dash. I mean, so literally, as you progress, your body progresses. You can't take the punishment you used to take, and I think that may be a key. But again, I'm not a scientist, and maybe the NFL will think about that a little further in the future.
Well, I actually have the information on now. The player's name was Marshawn Nealon. He was a former defensive end for the Cowboys. And what's so concerning, even though I agree with everything you said, Carlos, was it doesn't take 10 years or even 5 years. This guy he played a year and a half and was 24 years old and had stage 1 CTE. So like that's the concerning part where it doesn't even take a full career of punishment. It could just
Wow.
be the punishment you take from high school, college, and then getting to the NFL. And even though the NFL back in the day had less rules and guys were getting clotheslined and stuff like that, the players now are just bigger and stronger and faster than they've ever
I'd
been.
agree.
Yeah, like having a 300-pounder. There were no Aaron Donalds 300-pounders running 4.6, hitting quarterbacks and things like that. So even though they've tried to change the rules to make things more safe, it's only so much you can do with guys that big, that strong, flying around, hitting at full speed. So again, like I love the game, but I gotta see how the game can last another 20 years without destroying all the players that play it and ruining their lives. Like you said,
Yeah.
what is the payoff? We love to be entertained, but at the cost of these young men's futures, is that worth it?
There's a college football sport, and I don't know if you guys have heard, I think it's called speed football, where all the college players weigh 175 pounds or less. So, and I didn't even know what that was. I had never heard of it, but we have had one of our most recent high school graduates out of our football program, and he went to a college in Pennsylvania. I don't want to call out his college or anything, but he said, "Yeah, we're playing Navy next week." So I look at the Division I schedule, and I was like, "Oh, I don't see them on there." But then he said, "No, it's speed football, so it's college football for players that weigh 100, can't weigh any more than 175 pounds." And I was like, "Really?" So that made me think. I mean, I think CJ is completely right on that, right? Jeff Bostic, the center for the Washington Redskins during the glory years, what was he, 6'2", 255 pounds? What does centers weigh now? Almost 300, like 6'5",
Yeah,
300?
yeah.
You're
300 is like
right. I
light.
think,
That's light work.
yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So that might be the key too. I mean, almost like when you play boys club, right? It was done by weight. What was it, 120 pound?
Yeah.
I weighed 125 pounds in fourth grade, so I couldn't play. But anyway, but I think the NFL is going to have to look at something like that because you're right. If age deteriorates your body, right? I mean, it's nothing we can do. That's the progress of aging. But then you're right. The weight and the strength. I mean, do we say, hey, you 300-pound weight limit on the offensive or defensive line, or do you say 275? I think Joe Green was 275. In his heyday, one of the best ever. We thought he was a monster at 6'5", 275. I've seen a Ravens defensive tackle. I forgot, was it Haloti Nada? One of those guys? Like 350. I could have sworn his arms were bigger than my legs. I mean, yeah, so if you're getting hit by guys like that, it's no doubt you're going to have some issues. So maybe the NFL will figure out a way to make it better, but I don't think that cap on the helmet is going to do it.
It's like the
Well,
natural
when you think of,
evolution.
I was going to say, when you think about what CJ brought up, the cumulative effect of some of these kids playing from pee wee football all the way up, and by the time they get to the pros, man, they've had years. And in some of these pee wee leagues, safety is not paramount in
No.
these pee wee leagues. It's like, shake it off, kid. What are you?
And
So that's something to think about.
You
one more
know,
thing I was going to say, even though I didn't play college football, and mainly I didn't do it because I had an injury late in my high school career, but I played in about 40 high school football games. I never had a concussion. But the coach we had said you should never use your helmet. You tackle with your arms and your shoulders. Today's players go for knockout hits. I mean, when they some of them don't even want to put their arms around you. They just fly into you at full speed and just hit you as hard as they can. And I think a lot of those things contribute to CTE. But again, you're right. If they're doing this in high school, college, and then into the pros because they want to get bigger contracts, they want to get drafted, etc. They're going to continue to go for the knockout hit. You've even seen plays. I think it was the New Orleans versus Minnesota maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and the New Orleans safety went for the hit instead of wrapping up, and I think Minnesota's receiver caught it and went in for a winning touchdown late in the playoffs. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. If you played the game the way it was supposed to be played, you would definitely have less CTE. But the young kids want the contracts. They want to go to a D1 school. They want to live that big life. So again, we'll have to see what the scientists and the doctors do because this is a serious problem. And you're right. It seems like they have tried to, the NFL has, I'm not sure if it's the NFL, but somebody's tried to hide that Will Smith movie. And what was it called, CJ? Because you're right. I think it was a pretty good movie. I saw it, and it actually focused on Pittsburgh Steelers center Mike Webster, who's a Hall of Famer who I believe passed with CTE. What's the name of that movie with Will Smith?
I believe that movie was called Concussion.
Oh, just simply concussion.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it's
it was
called Concussion.
Wow.
You know,
a lot to think about.
I don't know if y'all recall, but we had an NFL player on here, and he talked about you have to play a certain number of seasons in the NFL to be eligible for retirement. And I just looked it up, and to be vested or qualified for lifetime NFL pension or retirement, a player must play 3 credited seasons. And it goes on to say that at age 55, which is really shocking for the money that they pay these players, at age 55, the payout is calculated is based on accredited seasons, roughly $1,000 to $1,250 a month per credited season, and a cap of 10 years. I'm shocked at that kind of money.
It ain't a lot of money with medical
Yeah.
bills.
Yeah,
Another
like
thing I wanted to say
Wow.
about NFL football, and I know everybody here watches it, a lot of players in the NFL don't get hurt by the opposing players. They get hurt by their own players when 2 guys are going after a tackle. I mean, these guys go all out, full bore, because they are trying to do a couple of things: entertain the people watching and impress the coach. And a lot of these coaches require that. I don't know if you remember what years ago when I can't think of the coach's name now. He went into the booth as an analyst, and now he's a coach again. But he was with the New Orleans Saints, and he had bounties on players. You remember Bounty Gate?
talking Greg Williams.
Greg Williams, he was with
It
Washington.
was our defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
No,
you're right. You're
no,
right.
what was the guy's coach from New Orleans? He got suspended.
Sean Payton?
Sean Payton.
Oh, okay.
They had bounties on players. And so what he was telling his players were go all out and hurt these guys. And they would get a bonus if they hurt someone.
Man.
So a lot of this stuff that goes on is perpetuated by the peer pressure that's put on by these head coaches and all. But it's amazing that the amount of money that they receive at age 55. Now, it does come with health benefits paid, and they can get tuition reimbursement if they want to go back and finish their college degree. But you only get $1,000 to $1,250 per credited season.
Wow.
So that's
I think I did hear that what O.J. Simpson got $12,500 a month, which would be 10 seasons or something like that.
And that's why a lot of these guys will try to play as long as they can, because the longer they play, the more money they're going to get in retirement. But the crazy thing is, if you can only play until you're 30 years old and you can't draw your pension until you're 55, that's another, 25 years? So if you haven't saved some of that money, you can understand when we did the podcast on athletes who have gone broke.
Yeah.
Because they got 25 years before they can start drawing that pension.
I used to see some of the athletes when I was doing a lot of traveling at the airport, handling bags. They're doing baggage. I saw two NFL players or former NFL players handling bags at the airport. So I'm going to drill down. CJ, you had any final comment?
Not really, other than like I said, it's just the evolution, like I said, of the physicality, and like I said, you can look at it in all the sports leagues, as I mentioned before. Like in the 80s and 70s, they were great athletes, but there weren't any Giannis Antetokounmpos or, Victor Wembanyama's, and even on the NFL side, there was no Myles Garrett to be blocked, or somebody like that, where we talk about how big and strong these guys are. There's a viral clip from NFL films of a offensive lineman screaming for his entire life for his quarterback because Myles Garrett was double teamed and beat him, and he's yelling at Jordan Love like, "Jordan, run, please!" Like he's got grown professional offensive linemen literally screaming like little girls because so physically imposing, and like you have to double team him and things like that. And he's now with the Rams, but it just shows like the athletes are built differently nowadays with sports medicine and science and just the evolution of everything.
Man.
I
All right,
got one other thing I'd like to throw out with the sports. I know that LeBron James is leaving LA, but what I've been hearing is that the Philadelphia 76ers is the top competitor, contender for him to go there. And it's strange because Jaylen Brown was traded there from the Celtics. So I'm wondering, is the 76ers trying to put together a powerhouse?
They're trying, but like I said, Rich Paul went on a podcast and he put on a whiteboard all the final locations of what LeBron was thinking about. And me and Trey were talking about the other day, and we actually got the two of the teams right. I think he had it narrowed down to Cleveland, Miami, Minnesota, and then Philly,
So
as you said.
Golden State is one of them,
Yeah,
supposed.
Golden State was a outside chance of
Yeah.
Golden State. It's just like I don't think the money's going to work out unless they can do some stuff with Jimmy Butler's contract and do something with that, which they're trying to trade with the Wizards for Anthony Davis, but the Wizards don't seem interested in Jimmy Butler right now unless the Golden State can give up a lot. So that's where they're kind of stuck with that. If Golden State's able to get Anthony Davis, then I think LeBron would definitely want to go there and Draymond would take a pay cut and stuff like that. But those were the final locations that he had mapped out for LeBron for his free agency. Minnesota was the surprising one for me. I never really thought about Minnesota as a fit, but they've got LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, and so they've got an interesting fit. Like I said, Philly is interesting, as you said, because they could use a power forward, and I just don't believe in the health of Joel Embiid, so I wouldn't be rushing to go to Philly, but that's a possibility as well. Cleveland, not a great basketball fit, but could be a nice homecoming tour for his final season to go back home and do kind of like a retirement tour at Cleveland. And they do have a good team, so he could fit there. And like I said, I think Denver was an outside choice they had on the board as well, possibly to play with Jokic could be interesting. So it's interesting. He left his son behind in LA, and he's gonna go look to finish his career somewhere else.
Do you think they're going to kick his son back to the G League?
Maybe he's not that good. Like I said, unless
No,
he
he's not good
improves.
enough.
Yeah, if he improves a bunch, I mean, he might be able to be in the bench rotation. But he didn't blow anybody away with his play. He does, So we'll see. He seems like a fringe NBA guy.
Man. Well, I'm gonna go petty and just ask you all, what's bothering you? What pissed you off this week? I'm gonna tell you what I saw earlier in the week. I saw a video. Actually, I saw two or three videos of high school and college kids, and they were asked to tell the time, and they had a clock with hands, and they could not tell time with a clock with hands. And I'm like, these are college students. What is going on that they're teaching or not teaching that high school and college kids, at least the 10 or 12 that I saw, could struggle to figure out that it's not 2:30 because they saw the hand. They couldn't figure it out. Am I alone in this? Or is this the norm now? I know they stopped teaching cursive writing, so I know there are a bunch of college students that don't know how to sign their name. But that was just what's bothering me this week. Carlos, what's on your mind?
Well, Gary, you're not by yourself. I mean, yeah, like I said, working with high school student athletes, yeah, that's just not a priority right now. Learn how to tell time with a clock with hands. I mean, it's all about digital on the iPhone and the iPad and the smart board, and it's just the way it is. I agree. I think that they should know how to tell time on an analog clock. I mean, I think they should know how to write in cursive. I believe that regardless of how digital you go, you're probably going to buy a house and buy a car, and they're going to ask you to sign someplace and not print your name. So, um, again, to us, it makes no sense at all because we were trained and educated in a different era, but that's pretty normal. But as far as what's pissing me off, in a way, it's a weird way to be upset or mad. It's how do I put this? As much as we just talked about football and the NFL and concussions and things like that, man, football in America is like the number one sport. And soccer is not even close to it in America, but even though soccer is building a following. Watching the World Cup, people are just crazy about the World Cup, especially people who were born in different countries. And I tried to watch the US game the other night, and man, that thing was moving so slow, and it was like no scoring. And, I think sports for me is always um, more impressive when you're there because then you can see like things you wouldn't see on TV. But as far as what's bothering me, it's still bothering me as to think, how is soccer just the greatest sport in the world when football by far in the US is like the greatest sport? But that bothers me a little bit, but I guess I'll get over it because I was going to say the soccer fans overall are usually nicer, but sometimes they're not in other countries. So that bothers me too. But that's what's bothering me. Soccer. Oh, I'm sorry. World football versus American football.
Okay, that's right. Get it right. Get it right. All right, Mr. Spivey, what's on your mind?
No, the thing that bothers me more than anything, Gary, is I'm just getting tired of seeing so much of this racism and this type of thing. It's like people have been given a blank check that if you want to just expound your racism, just do it. And one of the things that bothered me was this white nationalist march. It's called the Patriot Front on the 4th of July in DC. And they go around, they're carrying the flag, Confederate flags and all. But the ironic thing that really bothers me is all of them have a white face.
Oh yeah, they cover their faces.
They cover their faces and put
Cowards.
on sunglasses. So, if you want to be a racist, and I don't care about you being a racist, but at least stand up for what you want to do and stop hiding behind something. So that's kind of stuff bothers me because, I talked earlier about the African American Museum, and he wants to gut that and take away all of the stuff in there. And then you see these racists going around. And anytime a mic is put in front of one of these politicians' face, the only thing they will say is they have freedom of speech. And so that's the way they write it off instead of condemning it. So that really bothers me because it looks like it's a constant thing every week, one racist thing or another.
Okay, CJ.
I actually had the same thing. Ironically, for that Patriot Front thing, I ended up debating a couple of those guys in a Facebook post earlier this week, exactly about that Patriot Front group marching in DC, and it just made me realize the greatest damage that Trump and Fox News and the Turning Point USA have done to America is convincing those people on the right that only their news sources are valid. Only the news sources that validate what you already believe is correct. Because there's no way to debate someone like that. You could give them all the facts, but they're like, oh, if it didn't come from Newsmax or One Nation News, or if it doesn't come directly from Donald Trump, then it's fake. And they just dismiss it out hand. And like, there's nothing you could logically do with that. Like, there's nothing, like, there's no way to go. It really is a hopeless feeling of some people are so hopelessly stupid and racist in this country. There's no amount of logic. You can't kindly, try to lead them to what they're just so unbelievably and irreparably stupid. It's hard to fathom, and that they're so double down. Like, the guy first was defending them, and I was like, okay, that's a weird. Why are you defending a bunch of white nationalists? Then they do the Republican thing where it's like, oh, I don't know anything about them personally. So you were just defending them, but you don't know anything about the guys. And then they kept making the same narrative of there was that picture of that black lady surrounded by all those guys on the subway.
On the metro.
Yeah. And they just kept saying, oh, that's the safest she's probably ever been. And that was the narrative that they kept trying to say, oh, she's so safe. They didn't commit any violence. They didn't do anything. It's like, Yeah, because like those people are cowards. Like I said, that's why their faces are covered. They're
Yeah.
not going to do anything in front of the press that could give them actual repercussions. That's why they wait till they're on duty as ICE officers or police officers to do their racist stuff. Like that's who those people are. That's why you never see police at those rallies. They're in the same place like Superman and Clark Kent, and that's why you never see Klansmen and Patriot Front, in the same place at the same time. So it's just disheartening to see so many people just defending that. And they're just very, very, very stupid. And I think we're at a point where people are too stupid. We might be at a point of no return where I don't know how we fix this.
Remember one thing, CJ, Donald Trump said years ago that he liked uneducated people. And those are the people that he has in his camp, uneducated people.
Let me tell you something.
The main thing that really bothers me more than anything, I had another rant about this, was like these people, these white nationalists, they want to be victims so bad. Like they want to be oppressed. They say they're oppressed. They're saying they're being replaced. And then when I point out white people own everything, like you guys own the government, you have the White House, Supreme Court, the presidency, a white supremacist president at the moment. So you guys have all of that. Judges, the courts, predominantly white, all the way to the Supreme Court. Who runs all the corporations? Who runs all the, like say, who's all the owners for all the sports teams? Don't look at the players. Who controls the power? Like the white people control every lever of power in this country, but they still want to march around and say that they're the victims for some reason and say that it's just ridiculous to me.
Think
Well,
about this too. You can't have power without uneducated followers. Because again, in order for you to do some crazy things and to do things to make people believe it's the right thing, you have to have followers, right? People are like, well, it can't, maybe that's true if he has that many followers, but you have to have, again, uneducated followers who aren't smart enough to advise you correctly. So it makes you look like you're more powerful, and then they believe they're fighting for a good cause. So it's a lot of confusion in this country right now with that method of leadership.
In the words of Bill Clinton, do the math. What percentage is Black folks in the United States compared to the percentage of white folks? Just do the math. It's impossible for us to have all the jobs and everything because we're not a big enough percentage.
Well, you know what? I'm going to close out. We're going to have a short show tonight. We'll close out. I want y'all to just answer 2 questions. All right, banker man. Here we go, finance guy. You ready? First question, one person you would love to interview or have on this show. Second question, best advice you've ever received.
Wow. I'm gonna throw you all off guard with one person I'd like to interview, right? Because my wife and everybody who knows me would probably say, you probably want to interview Barack Obama. Okay? Yes, I would. But I'd like to interview one person instead of Barack Obama. I would like to interview the second George Bush. And the reason being, he could give me insight into all the things his father did, like be director of the CIA and his information from World War II. He could give me direction on his father being vice president under Reagan. He can give me information on how Reagan actually ran the White House. He can give me information on how his father, when he became president, ran the White House. He can give me information about Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton, he basically accepted the presidency or transitioned the presidency from Bill Clinton. He then transitioned the presidency to Barack Obama, so he can give me information about Barack Obama. And as an unlikely hero, he has lately been giving us information about how much he dislikes Donald Trump. So I figure instead of getting an interview from one president, I could get an interview from like 5 presidents through George W. Bush, just through, the people who have been in his life, the circles he's been in, and his relationship, I guess you can say, with the transition of receiving power from Clinton, transitioning to Barack Obama, etc. The best advice I've ever gotten in my life, wow, it was from a guy. It was like a dude who had just gotten out of jail, who was in the neighborhood talking about he was going to do things the right way going forward. I was like 12 or 13 years old. And I remember he told me that he used to make $500 an hour. And I was like, how'd you make $500 an hour? He's like, I stole it. I was like, wow. And he said, he said, let me tell you something, young blood. I was like, what? He said, the best way to get out of a bad situation is not to get into it. I said,
Okay.
okay. I said, he said, think about it. He said, once you get in, sometimes it's very hard to get out. Just think about that. And I appreciated that years later because, I didn't really know what he meant. But yeah, sometimes you go down a rabbit hole, it's hard to get out. It's hard. So I think that was pretty cool information from a dude who had done some time, who was trying to turn his life around and trying to influence some people the right way going forward.
Okay. One other thing about George Bush, he and Michelle Obama are pretty tight. They
Wow.
right.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, he ain't as bad as we thought he was.
Well,
I
so
don't
it
know about
appears.
that.
At
Yeah,
least I'll say
I don't
this.
know.
How about
a
this?
war criminal.
Right. Well, I would say this. You got to, you know what? That's a good point because CJ, that's an excellent point because, people have been profiting off the presidency for years. I mean, no one's done it at the level of our current leader. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's always some issues with everybody. But at least from the personal side, I respect him.
You just muted yourself.
I said, I'm sorry about that. I said, at least what CJ said was very true. There's always been some type of corruption or something that's been questionable with every leader. Maybe it's big, maybe it's small. And I think Barack Obama's only thing you could question him about really was a tan suit. But in the grand scheme
I
of
mean, I don't know about
in the
that.
grand scheme of things, okay, I would say that George Bush was a much better person outside the White House than Donald Trump. I can say that. So. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Mr. Spivey, who would you like to interview?
If I had a choice, I would like to interview Stephen Miller, who is Donald Trump's chief of staff. I would just like to interview him and try to look inside of the mind of a Nazi and just see how he and Adolf Hitler and these other people think. I would love to interview him and be able to interview him with like a no holds barred. So if he decided he wanted to do something like Donald Trump does when a reporter asked him something and he calls him stupid or calls him low IQ, I would be able to come back at him the same way he would come after me. The thing I learned, my mother told me something one time, and I've always applied it. She told me always think logically. That logic applies to every single thing that you do. And a lot of times you may not know the answer to something, but if you think about it logically, you can come up with the right answer. And also, she told me to never make assumptions. Don't assume something. Find out the facts of it for yourself, and you'll never steer you wrong.
Okay. CJ, who would you like to interview and best advice you ever received?
I'm kind of with Mr. Spivey. I would love to interview any one of these like prominent right-wing figures in a no holds barred fashion because it's really frustrating to watch the media deal with them. Like I said, there's very few good interviewers that are on the prominent national stage, I guess, that are allowed to actually ask tough questions. And then those type of people avoid any type of adversarial journalist anyway. So again, it would be great to have them sit down with somebody like Mr. Spivey said, who could actually hold their feet to the fire and doesn't get flustered when they try to deflect or try to go to their personal attacks and things like that, to just really, reveal how terrible their philosophy and politics is. And in those regards too, like I said, we got to be careful about rehabilitating the image of certain people too, because George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were responsible for hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths in the Middle East and forever wars and killing, the deaths of American servicemen and, just there's endless amount of terrible war crimes, the torture of Guantanamo Bay and all those things and all the things proceeded from 9/11, all the rights that George Bush took away from us during 9/11 with the Patriot Act and all those things. So there's, I know, compared to Trump, he seems a lot better, but let's not forget that he is also probably, like a war criminal that probably also deserves to go to The Hague along with Dick Cheney. And the best advice I got unrelated to that was it's I was in New York. I remember one time with my buddy up there, and I was stressing about making one of the buses. And I remember just one time as we were rushing, trying to get to our next event and stuff like that, and he just was so calm, and he was like, "If we don't make it, then that's not our bus." And I didn't, really understand what he was saying because it was so simple. But it's like that's not our bus, even if it was our bus, because like if we're doing everything we need to do to make it on time and doing everything we need to do, if we don't make that bus, then maybe we were meant to be on another bus because we needed to help some old lady out or something, or maybe there are some circumstances where that other bus crashes or something. It's just to just do your best on your end and have faith that you'll end up where you need to end up.
All right. Well, that's our show. The headlines will change tomorrow. Social media trends will come and go, but wisdom, integrity, compassion, and thoughtful conversation never goes out of style here on the Thought Brothers. So thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep thinking, keep listening, and keep building stronger communities, one conversation, one thought at a time. I'm Gary Johnson for the Thought Brothers, and we are out of here.
Good night.
Thank you.
Take care, folks. Good night.